place where faith meets caregiving and caregivers. Find strength to keep going, keep pushing, keep loving, and keep caring.
Hey, caregivers and everybody listening in on tonight. Welcome to another episode of the My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner podcast. I've been away for a couple weeks, but I am back now and I'm excited to be back live with you all on tonight. And before I go any further, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go ahead and share the live, share it with those that are in your network, share it with a caregiver, share it with a caregiver family, share it with everybody. If you have a page, a group, what have you, go ahead and share this live. I often say, yes, this is a Caregivers Corner podcast that focuses on caregivers, but it's for everybody. It's for everybody. So jump on, go ahead, share it. Take that moment right now and just go ahead, follow, like, share, send it out. And I guarantee you this is going to be another conversation that is so worth you tuning into on tonight. So caregiver friends, caregiver families, those that are connected, share it. And then do me a favor real quick and let us know where you are tuning in from on tonight. We want to be able to shout you out. So go ahead and do that for me real quick. I'm going to do the same thing and go ahead and share it in groups on my page as well. And then we're going to go ahead and move forward and get into this conversation on tonight. My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner is a space that's created to strengthen, empower, inspire, and uplift caregivers through real, personal, and impactful conversations. Of course, I am your host, Priscilla Jean-Louis, and I am honored to have you tuning in with us on tonight. Go ahead, again, like, follow, subscribe, tag, share it. Share it on your page right now. Get others. Call them if you want to. Go ahead, call, text it, email, whatever you have to do. But go ahead and invite somebody else to tune in on tonight. And I want to go ahead and remind you as well that you can also listen and subscribe to the podcast on digital platforms. And so right now it's live, but once we go off the live, you can also listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and of course on the website at www.priscillajjohnlouis.com. And so make sure you go ahead and subscribe on whichever one of those platforms you listen to most, or just go ahead and subscribe to all of them. And we'll make sure that you can hear not just this one, but even previous podcasts. So do me a favor and go ahead and hit that button right now. Today's conversation is one that I believe that every caregiver can relate to. We often talk about the progression of the disease for the loved one that we're caring for, whether or not it is dementia, it is heart disease, it's cancer, what have you. We can talk about the progression of that disease, but we rarely talk about the progression of the actual caregiver. And the reality is that caregiving doesn't just change the person that you're caring for, but it also profoundly changes the person that is caring for that person. And so my guest tonight knows that firsthand. She knows what it's like to walk alongside a loved one through this caregiving journey, and now having to also navigate life after that role comes to an end. And so I am honored again. Those that have been following me for a while, you know that she's been on the podcast before. It's always a joy to have her on. She is a friend of mine. She has become a really good friend of mine. We met on this caregiving journey, and that's also a great thing. Even when you are on this journey and some of these different groups that are out there, you get to meet other people who are on this same journey that you can connect with. And she and I realized we had a whole lot in common. even as we connected through the Dementia with Grace group. And it's been a couple years now. I'm not even sure how long it's been, but it's been a couple years since we've been connected. And we have a good time sometimes, just talking and giggling and all that wonderful stuff that we do, and even advocating together. She's up here a lot doing rally and tally. She comes up and we connect then. But we just, enjoy talking with one another. And so tonight, I am honored to have you again, Sherilyn Haley. Welcome back to the My.
Thanks for having me.
All right, all right. And so we've been planning this for a while. I think at one point she wanted to come on and talk to me, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna allow her to do a good interview with me one of these days. But we talked about just kind of co-hosting because, like I said, we have so many things in common, and so many things that happen. And she'll shoot me a text and bounce some stuff off of me every now and then. I do the same thing, and we just realized that, what, there's a whole lot of conversations that we have that could really help other people. And so y'all gonna be seeing a lot more of both of us together, a whole lot more, because we're going to do some things just to help try to bring some greater awareness to other people as it relates to caregiving, and just being real about what this journey is about, because oftentimes we may not, talk about every single thing all the time. But then there are some things that we do need to discuss so that other people can know and understand better how to really deal with caregivers. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being on. She says, thank you, ladies. We appreciate you for being on tonight, for tuning in. Thank you. And so we're going to go ahead. Before I get into this conversation, Sherilyn, if you would do me a favor and just introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are outside of being my friend.
I'm Shirley Ann Haley. I am located in Tampa, Florida. And one of the things that's really a cool thing that you didn't mention, Priscilla, is that we have so many things in common on this dementia journey. But my mom was living in a facility and your mom is at home. And so sometimes we've talked about like the variations of that. 3 years ago, well, probably more than 3 years ago, people started talking to me about Teepa Snow and understanding what she was doing, and I had no idea who she was, and I didn't think she could help me because as a caregiver that really wasn't looking for help and understanding, I felt like that I knew everything, right? Like I knew my situation was different, we were unique, nobody else was going to be able to help us. And long story short, once I finally started taking some help in direction and listening, I ended up training with Teepa Snow and becoming certified in what's called positive approach to care. So I did a lot of that to better interact with my mom. And now that my mom has passed, I have used some of it in the past to help others. But now, maybe after some time in the summer when fall starts, I hope to come back to be able to do more. I have courses that I'm licensed and certified to teach. And so I'd like to do that as well. As I kept saying after my mom passed away, I was just getting my footing. And then, as you know, I fell and broke my foot. So I was like, well, isn't that ironic? So I took that as God's like little hint to say, don't find your footing yet, just slow down a little bit. So I'm slowing down for the moment, but come fall, I'm hoping to be back at it.
All right, sounds good. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that plug in. If you are in the Tampa area, please check out our courses. I think that they are well worth it, especially those who are in the beginning. It doesn't matter what stage you are in on this journey, but especially those who come in who are just kind of confused about what to expect. I get that question a lot. People calling me who are just beginning this journey and they want to know, what should I expect from it? And so Cheryl Ann's class, I almost called you Sandy. I'm so used to Sandy's daughter, but Cheryl Ann's course is phenomenal. And if you're in that area, I highly suggest it. We will definitely put that information up. If you're on Facebook, her Facebook page is Sandy's Daughter PAC, Dementia Educator. That is the name of it. You can find her on there. Go follow her. And so when she does come back, because here's the thing. One of the things that I did tell her, she had been caring for her mom for so long that one of the first things I did say to her is like, hey, you need to take a break. You need to really just breathe, be able to catch your breath and be able to, get in tune with yourself, because a lot of times we get so engulfed in caring for our loved ones that we do. And it is almost like the pot calling the kettle black, because, I'm still, I work on it all the time. Being able to really say, you know what, you really need that me time. You need that time to be able to get away from it. But that's one of the things that I did encourage, and I still do, because it's only been what, 3 months?
April,
Yeah.
April.
So
So
since
May, June,
April.
two and a
Yeah,
half months. It
2.5
seems so
months.
long ago at this point.
Yeah. So, she's taking a break, which is much needed. And so when she jumps back, definitely get on those classes. They're not virtual just yet, but who knows, at some
In the
point.
fall.
Yep, in the fall. So you can catch the virtual class as well. And Jessica, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jason's Place on Stonehill, a residential assisted living home staff. Loves learning from Cheryl Ann. She's the best. See, we have somebody
And
who
I'm
is
going to say, I probably, if you look at my Facebook, it probably doesn't look like I've slowed down at all.
not much, but here and there. And guess what? It's okay. You do it at your own pace. You're just not doing as much. So that's great. So listen, we're going to go ahead and jump into this conversation. This is season 6, episode 6. And tonight we're talking about how caregiving reshapes your life, identity, and relationships. The unexpected transformation of the caregiver. And before we get into talking about how caregiving shaped you into becoming who you are now, Cheryl, and I'd love for you to let the audience know, help them get to know who you were before your journey of caregiving began with your mom. Who was Cheryl Ann?
Well, I talked to a friend of mine that's known me probably longer than most of my friends today. And so, and we talked about me taking a break, but I was always very dedicated to work. So, and I had just moved to Tampa, about 2 hours away from my parents, when my mom had vascular dementia. So it was from a series of mini strokes. So it really kind of kicked in, I'd say shortly after I moved, like 2 years after I moved. And I was just kind of like, I had been in Tampa for 2 years, had my friends made, my job was going good, things were like coasting along. And then all of a sudden the strange stuff started happening. But, and I look back and I think I worked all the time. I worked out all the time at that point. And so that's something that was difficult for me to realize that I left, so it's hard for me to get back into the gym. Although I remember I was in the gym a lot here and I absolutely loved it. I was probably like in my best shape before all this started, physically. Very much in church, so I didn't miss anything from church. Today, I returned from my first day at Vacation Bible School, so I'm getting some of that back. So I'm kind of right now just testing the waters to see what I used to do and what I did during caregiving to see if that still fits me, because this caregiver journey was not short. It was a whole decade. So, like, it was a whole decade of life. So even without dementia, life would have changed me, And so now I'm just trying to figure out what exactly that looks like and what I really like and what maybe I don't like anymore.
Yeah. And that's another thing that we have in common. I don't want it to stop at this point, but it has been a decade for me. It's been 10 years, actually going on 11 years with me caring for my mom. And I'm going to push a pause right here. Gigi, thank you so much. She says that she just found out about this from her mom's caregiver aide CNA. So welcome to the My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner podcast. But yes, so it had been 10 years. And so before then. So where were you working?
I was managing a hospice thrift store. And
Okay.
so that was staffed by volunteers that were mostly retired ladies they were the ones that cued me in the Alzheimer's and dementia portion of this. Because my best expression was not my mom,
Yeah.
not my mom. My mom doesn't do this, this, and this. My mom wouldn't have dementia or Alzheimer's. And like we would come back and I would share stories and they would just say, I think your mom has Alzheimer's. And I just actually went out to lunch with one of the volunteers last week, and her husband had Alzheimer's, and so he would come in with us. And so I was laughing with her because she had done a virtual dementia tour. And so I said, "Oh my gosh, I would like to do that." And she said, "You wouldn't be able to handle that. You just wouldn't be able to handle it. Your personality wouldn't be able to handle any of that." And so when we were at lunch last week, I said, "My, how far I've come because you said that I wouldn't be able to handle a virtual dementia tour. And now sometimes I help lead them." So just amazing how God has worked through that.
Yeah.
And
And
amazing that I can talk about this with a smile on my face. And
yeah.
maybe that's why I haven't backed off, because I believe that I am right where God has placed me to be. And would I have preferred that I was out talking about like puppies and sunflowers and things like that? Yes. Would I prefer my mom didn't have to go through the dementia journey? Yes, I would prefer that she didn't go through any of that. But if I can help families see their loved one as their loved one and not just the dementia, then that's really what I want to do.
Yeah. And that's where we find ourselves, even in this season of life. May not be where we expect it to be, but I'm a strong believer that where we are, it really is exactly where God has planned for us to be. Sometimes it seems like, and I say to myself a lot, especially even more lately, that it's just a season, and seasons do change. They change. Sometimes they're longer than others, but they do change. And so you talk about the virtual dementia tour. We hosted a conference, it's been 2 years ago, and we had the virtual dementia tour as a part of it. And I still have people to this day who are just like, it had such an impact on them, to be able to do that tour. But I think that it's so good, especially for people who are not familiar with dementia, to understand the person who's living with it, what's really going on with them. But yeah, I think that you've definitely gained the ability to be able to talk about it, very much so. And so, what parts of your life feel most different now compared to before you were a caregiver?
I feel somewhat removed from life. So, not necessarily isolated, because I was able to stay in contact. I would go to church on Sunday morning, late service, so I could sleep in, go to church, leave church, not necessarily serve, not necessarily interact as much. A couple weeks ago, I was in the church parking lot with somebody talking for 35 minutes after service, just talking. And I remember walking to the car going, wow, I haven't done that for a long time. So my life I was still involved, but and not isolated, but kind of removed from it, not necessarily like in it.
And so when you talk about that, right? When you say that it's removed, what type of feelings and emotions did you go through with that? I know I deal with my own right now, right? And I think sometimes what people sometimes don't really understand is there's a I know for me, there's been like a inner battle in so many ways of, especially when you're used to going, used to being there, used to being active, used to being a part, and then your life shifts and you're not able to be there as much or do as much, and you do feel in some ways out of place, right? And that can have its own type of emotional it comes with its own emotional strain, and you having to deal with it. Is that something that you two experienced like while you were in there? And I know it's a little different because, of course, like you said before, with me, I'm right here every day. My mom is actually in the house with me, whereas with you, your mom was actually in a facility and you were still caring, but you were able to actually like go home and do some things. But how did that impact you as well? Did you have those same type feelings of like, I can't do the same thing? And sometimes it's just a struggle.
Well, I think what you say, come home and do some things. A lot of the times I would come home and just sit, just like sit. The TV might be on, but I couldn't tell you what I was watching. I don't know how many times somebody would text me, and I have a friend that would text me and say, "What are you doing?" And I would text her a picture of my ceiling fan because I was legit sitting in my bed watching my ceiling fan. Not because I was sad or depressed, just because I didn't have the bandwidth to do anything else. And so I just remember sometimes thinking how different it was that I could just turn off my emotions about some things. Because I would say that I'm an emotional person, but in many ways, either I shut it off or my emotions were just turned off because they were so tired all the time, So, yeah, I was kind of more shut down emotionally.
Okay. Okay. And I want to give a shout out to Sonia. Hi, Sonia. So glad to have you on with us tonight. We got to get together as well. I'm back now. We got to get together. We met Sonia at the rally this year, and so she's just been a wonderful, wonderful connection, wonderful friend. But yeah, so not necessarily. I know for me, especially when COVID happened, and I had both my mom and my grandmother, and I wasn't really able to do a whole lot, and then having to be away. But then for me, like I said, it's been that struggle of not necessarily being able to do some of the things that I once did. And so you have that struggle there. And then, as you say too, the bandwidth, the capacity, that's been my thing of late. I mean, sometimes you want to do so much more, but the capacity, because what happens a lot of times too is there's that mental and emotional and physical that comes along with just the day to day watching your loved one just decline, watching it, and there's absolutely nothing you can do, and sometimes that could be a whole lot. But just had that question for you when you talked about the fact that there were some things that you weren't able to do the same way. And so moving forward, just in our conversation, as you were caregiving, were there some parts of Sherilyn that you lost along the way as you were caring for your mom? You feel?
I don't know. Like, I look back and I go, oh my gosh, that was a whole decade. Like, what did I potentially miss out on? And so, I mean, I'm going to be real. Personally, and I think I may have invested energy in this once I realized, because I'll tell people often, dementia is going to change you one way or another. Make sure it changes you for the better. And so that's such a hard statement. Like, is this really going to change me for the better? And I honestly believe, because I focused on that and looking for the good in situations and trying to force myself not to complain about my situation, I did everything I could to change me for the better. So, like, I walked away with probably the one regret. I mean, there's probably some smaller ones. My one regret kind of defines who I was before this started. My mom had begged me to go on a Panama Canal cruise with her. And I refused to go because I couldn't get that much time off of work. And so she ended up going by herself. And with dementia at the time,
Oh,
like
wow.
early stage, but still. So she went by herself, and like if I could take that moment back, I would have gone with her, you know. And during COVID is when we placed her, and shortly before that, we got a Discover bill with like $1,000 charge on it for Norwegian Cruise Line. And so I called them. And then I talked to the person and I was like, my mom can't go on this cruise. Like it was the presidential suite on a Panama Canal cruise. This cruise was like $10,000 or $12,000. It was booked during COVID when cruise ships weren't running. And I remember talking to the salesman and being like, we can't do this. Like, she can't do this. And I remember he told me the whole story, like how long she had been a realtor and how she retired and how hard she had worked and how much she loved me and how much she cared for me and how she wanted to do this with us. And I was just like, all I saw was the dollar signs and someone taking advantage of my mom with dementia. So when the time for the cruise passed, I remember thinking, I never should have canceled that cruise. I should have let that ride, and we would have been on a boat today. And she would have had dementia, but we would have been on a boat because she still has dementia and we're not on a boat. So
Yeah.
I just remember looking back on that's it is my one regret, that I just didn't stop to see and listen to my mom. Like, I know when I saw signs in her, but if I had stopped and listened a little bit more, would I have seen more signs?
Yeah. And I think you said the key thing when you started that. You have to find a way to find the positive, right, in
Mm-hmm.
this, because there's going to be so many negative things that come along with it. If you're going to maintain your footing and maintain who you are for real, you have to find the most positive side of it that you can. That's exactly why I do what I do with this podcast and even sharing the journey, because you have to find the good in it. And I realize as well that it's not just about me. It's not just about me. It's not just about my story, my journey. I've been able to meet some amazing people such as yourself and other people, and then being able to just simply do as you're doing, being able to help other people who are on this journey, people that are entering this journey who have no clue, but being able to build that community to say, you know what, hey, this is going to reshape you. It is going to change some things within you. It's going to change some things around you. But you have that ability to make sure that it does it for the good and not for the bad. I don't know about you, but in a lot of some of these groups that we're in,
I was going to
um,
say.
yeah, a lot of these groups we're in, man, some of those people are, I mean, I've read some comments that have literally broken my heart, because you have people who they can't see any good in it, none whatsoever. And it is just, it's taking them down, further and further down, because they just either want it to be over or they want I mean, it's a lot. Go ahead, say what you're
Yeah.
about to say.
So, well, I was thinking about that as you were sharing too. Like, I'm not going to talk to you, Priscilla. I'm talking to somebody who might be watching us, who is just starting this journey thinking, these two are nuts. I am not going to find any good in this. Like, it can happen. Like, you have to look for the good in your person. My whole goal is for people to see their loved one as their loved one, not dementia, And I do remember in the Dementia with Grace group, one day I had shared that my mother did something, my stepfather yelled at her, I yelled at him, and I just didn't know what to do anymore, And people are like, well, nobody should be. And Vicky got on and said, nobody should be yelling at anybody, but like she's admitting that she yelled and she's asking for help. And so, if you're in those Facebook groups where people are talking about them and medicate them more and drug them and like talking about their loved one in a negative way, exit the group,
Exit
leave
left.
the group, find the people that are going to encourage you to love your loved one through this. Like, I had to stop and see. One of the things that Tipa says all the time is your loved one isn't giving you a hard time, they're having a
Having a
hard
hard
time.
time. Yeah.
So when I reframed my thinking, like, okay, my mom yelling at me is her having a hard time. She's going through the worst experience of her life, and I am only seeing it as an interruption in my life, right? Because dementia is an interruption. It's an interruption in our lives, right? But um, if we decide to walk with them and partner with them and care partner with them and try to get to the end of this journey together with love, the way that you would want them to do it to you, it can be done. I mean,
Yeah.
people, the majority, I think the majority says opposite of that, you know,
Yeah.
and that's super unfortunate. And so we spend a lot of time trying to turn the tide just a little bit, one caregiver, one family at a time, trying to turn the tide just a little bit better. You know, like, I look back and think I must have been crazy because my mom and I had a bucket list to stay at every Disney resort at least once. And if you've heard me talk before, you've probably heard the story. But like, we did it, and it took a lot of work. But like, taking my mom to Disney and letting her ride, or going to Gatorland and zip line over gators with dementia was a lot more fun than arguing with her in a room because we were both bored, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people tend to just push them to the side. And I say all the time, and I believe it with my whole love is greater than dementia, right? A lot of people they become bitter and angry in the process. One, I believe because they just haven't educated themselves in on what dementia is really like. I mean, there are some things that happen, and I'm thankful because I think that God has just blessed me with a great level of patience when it comes to a lot. But there are things that just that come along, and I tell people you have to recognize that it is not your loved one. It's the disease, right? It's the disease that they have that is causing them to do that, but they are the same person that they were prior to the disease. The only difference between cancer and dementia and any other disease is that this is a brain disease, right? It's a brain disease. It's they forget, their memory is no longer there, and it continues to deteriorate, but they know love. That I can tell you. My
Mm-hmm.
mom does not recognize me as far as being her daughter, but I promise you she recognizes the love that she gets. She wants to follow me everywhere I go, you know. And the thing is, when I'm traveling, when I'm gone, I don't go that often, but when I do travel, there's a difference. And even the people that are here with her when I'm gone, everybody notices, is like she turns into a completely different person when I'm gone. When I was in New York a few weeks ago, that was the longest that I've been away from her in 10 years. And literally coming back to, the CNA that comes by, as well as the person that was here with her, telling me how literally the day before, 2 days before, she was just barely, not even really moving around. But I promise you, as soon as I walked in the house, she went right back to normal. And so I say that to say, yeah, they recognize love, but you have to, it's a level of patience, and you have to educate yourself to know, what does this look like, or you will be frustrated. That's the one thing that I do appreciate about the Dementia with Grace group. There are so many people in there, And shout out to Vicki Nolan Fitch, her group. It is, and I recommend it to everybody that I talk with. When that's one of the first things I ask, are you on Facebook? And I recommend that group because within that group, you do get that encouragement. You do get people who are praying for you, like literally. They will say a prayer. They will, just encouragement every now and again. Because right now, I think there's almost about 15,000 people in that group. But 15,000 every now and then, you may get one who may say something, off the wall. But the great majority, very encouraging, and it's a safe space, right? You're able to go in there. The Facebook allows these groups now to even do anonymous posts, where sometimes you do have people, because here's the reality. Myself, Cheryl Ann included, I'm sure perhaps I can speak for you when I say this as well. There are some days when you do absolutely get frustrated with some things that happen, and so, sometimes you do just need that vent, and you want to vent with those people who can truly understand and
Right.
feel what it is you're saying. And so it's a safe space where the majority of the people, they're not looking at you strange and saying, oh, she said, no, you'll find out of the 10,000, 15,000, you may have about 1,200 who say, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So not to get caught up there, but yeah, those are the things that you do want to look at. You want this to change you for the better as it reshapes your life. It's important that you make sure that the shaping is going in a positive way and not in a negative way. Caregiving also has a way of revealing relationships, strengthening some and challenging others. And I know that we can both stay there for quite a while, but just to ask, did caregiving affect your relationship with your family or your friends? And if so, how did it affect it?
um I think it affected a little bit of how I look at friendships. One of the things that is important to note about my relationships is more than likely I was always the planner, and I didn't have the opportunity to be the planner, like, so that was kind of difficult. Like if I wasn't planning, or sometimes people were looking for me to plan, it wasn't happening. And then when other people were planning, they weren't necessarily understanding what was happening with me. And so it was I'm sure it was hard to plan for me, because I kind of my life had to fit in this little tiny hole, and if you didn't understand that, you weren't designing the plans for me. um, I've met a great number of new friends just from this, friends that I've met because our parents have lived in the same facility. um, the day my mom passed away, somebody else had lost their mom just a few months earlier. And so, like, while she was going through like the transition period, there was one day that I just kind of showed up at her house, and I just stayed there for a few hours and listened. And so when my mom passed away, hey, I text, hey, what are you doing? Nothing, the door is open, and then I just showed up at her house for a few hours. And there are other houses that I was probably welcomed at, but I knew that at that moment she got where I was. um and then family relationships. Hold on, I might need a Kleenex for this.
It's okay.
Family relationships. My dad passed away. So my mom passed away in April, and my dad passed away in July, and he had been sick for a while. And there's a few things I remember about that. Like, well, one, thinking, would I have spent more time with him if my mom hadn't had dementia?
Mm.
And then sometimes I thought, well, maybe I spent more time with him when we knew he was sick because I wasn't focused on work because my mom had dementia. So that one's like a fine line. But also when he passed away, I felt like I should have had more emotions about that. But as I've already said tonight, my emotions were kind of shut down anyway. So I wasn't necessarily as emotional about that as I think I might have been, you know? But then, like, now sometimes it's a double whammy, you know? Like, I woke up on Father's Day, first Father's Day without my dad, no text, no card to send, no mom to turn around and be like, you know what, mom, this is hard, you know? Because even when my mom had dementia, I would still go talk to her about hard things. And so, like, she may not necessarily have known 100%. But even after my dad passed away and I came and told her, I was like, I remember thinking, she's not necessarily understanding. And then a few minutes later, she turned and said, I always thought that I'd see him at least one more time. And I was like, okay.
She understood.
She understands it. Like, she probably hadn't seen him for at least 10 years. You know, they've been divorced since I was a kid. Um, And so, but like, you know, it was a delayed response, but she said, I thought I'd see him one more time.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's kind of how the relationships are just, they're fluid. Relationships are fluid, you know, and you just have to remember that.
Yeah. And it's, I think for me too, it is just, having to, because I am right here in it, right? So a lot of times having to pick and choose what it is you decide to do, and sometimes that not always being understood, or at least the feeling that is not always understood, because I'm like, if I know I only have coverage for this amount of time, then you got to pick and choose. Okay, well, what event do I go to? Or do I go here and not here? You kind of have to plan all that through, because you only have an allotted amount of time. And so, and for me, I do think that just being in this space, it has again a decade, as you talked about it. It has changed relationships, in my opinion, drastically, right? Because as you know, and most of the people who follow me on social media, I just recently moved my baby, Kaylin. I call her my baby. I've called both of my girls my babies, but Kaylin just relocated to New York. And that's probably been one of the hardest things that I've had to do, because of the fact, I think for me, more than just the fact that our relationship is a very close one, but also realizing that the reality is Kaylin was that one person who consistently came to my house to see me. I could look forward to her actually coming a couple times a week, and that gave me that extra person that is, it's not the walls that you're
Right.
looking at. And so that has been difficult. The weekends have been they've been a lot different. I think I've been more emotional, and I had to realize as well that I think it's just the part of that empty nesting grief, because I haven't been in a space where I can be sitting down and then out of nowhere I'm crying. I haven't been in that space since my best friend passed away. And for me, somebody who rarely, or tries anyway to rarely cry, sometimes it can be scary because it's like, why am I crying out of nowhere? Or you start feeling this real tight, like, and you just, so it's all of that, but it's been that space of just, that one person that, and I mean, yeah, I talk to on video, but I'm used to just, being here. And so that can be the difficulty of it. Or just feeling like, okay, because of the fact that you're not able to do certain things the same way that you used to do them, that you do. For me, I've had that feeling of out of sight, out of mind, right? So it can be difficult. Family relationships, those are just different. Those are very different on my end in terms of just, I'm like, I all I can say is I just kind of wish that they were different and they were more active and involved. It would definitely help me a whole lot more on a whole different spectrum. But as we stated before, you just have to find that good side of it and focus there, because there's enough of it that would definitely take you to a different place.
Now, I would say that my brother was not active in this. And so he was on the other side of the country, but still, just a plane ride away, realistically. Um, so he wasn't active. But partway through that, looking for like how this was going to make me better, and also again shutting off my emotions, I realized that I just couldn't worry about him
Yeah.
anymore. Like I remember calling him one day when she was in the hospital and him saying, "This is just so hard." And me like looking at my phone going, "What?" But then, like, after I hung up with him, I was like, okay, for him, this is really hard. This is really hard for him, and he's not in it, you know? And so
What a way to look at it.
I had to stop and think, well, if it's really hard for him and he's not in it, how would he act if he was in it, you know? And am I better off with him not being in it? And so, like, my mom passing away was just the way people kind of tell you and in the movies. Um, I called him and texted him. And so the nurse that night came in and said, "Have you called your brother? And is your brother coming?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You should call him." And I said, "I'm not calling him." And she said, "Do you want me to call him for you?" So she did. I texted him and said, "Do you want to talk to the nurse?" And the nurse called and talked to him and brought me back the phone and said, "He's still on there. He'd like to talk to your mother." So I held up the phone and he told my mom that he loved her. And that was the night that she passed away. And
Yeah.
so then that way I can look back now, and my friends were encouraging me to do it, and my friends were praying that we would do that. And so I can look back now without regret and a clear conscience for myself, you know. And then so he came down for the funeral, and then after the funeral that Saturday, he texted me a video of his cats, I think, and I text him back a video of my cat, and I thought, is this how we're going to do this, you know? And
Yeah.
so this is kind of how we're doing this. Like we haven't had any big like, you know, brother sister reunification moment. We had maybe some moments at the funeral and lunch afterwards, but like we've texted more in the past 2.5 months than we have in the past decade, probably. So there's that.
Yeah. And it starts somewhere, right? Because you could have easily been very angry and bitter and said and done some other things. And a lot of people in some areas, include myself, just joking, but some people would have said, hey, it was justified, right? But
Right.
it's not, right? I mean, we have to find a way. If I could shut off a whole lot, I would. But I think for both of us, because of the life that we live, when it comes down to our relationship with the Lord, we know that that's just not something we can do. You got to
Right.
find a way to, even though sometimes it can be disheartening, it hurts, the whole nine. There still has to be a way to forgive and move on and see that bigger picture. Okay, you sent me a picture of your cat, I'm gonna send you a picture of my cat, and eventually we'll stop sending pictures of the cats and we'll send pictures of each other. And but wherever that takes you, right?
Yeah.
It's just all a part of that reshaping of the relationship. You don't know, I mean, in a decade, not having that help that could have been there that can lead, because I'm telling you, there are times right now that, I have siblings right here in the city, right here, and sometimes I do get frustrated, especially when, I'm not bothered a whole bunch, but there are things sometimes that I really want to do, places that I really want to go. And, if I make that call and say, hey, are you available? And it's immediate, I'm sometimes I get extremely frustrated. And lately it's been more tears than it has been frustrating. And
Yeah.
it's probably because my emotions are, some of everywhere, but sometimes it is that thought of like, dang, like this is she's all of our mom, why? And yeah, honestly, sometimes there is that thought of like, yes, I made the choice and the decision to care for her. And I would do it again if it came around. I would do the same thing because that's my mom. I love her, and I know beyond anything else she never wanted to be in a facility. And I think just by virtue as well of my profession, being able to go in and out of them, I wouldn't want her to be on one anyway. But there are those moments when you do feel like, man, I have to do everything by myself. I have to make every decision. I have to, anything that goes on, I got to plan everything. I got to, and it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming, but I still have to find those moments where I can still, find the positive end of that. Look at a brighter side. I'm always telling my children and everybody else, I'm like, yeah, things can be bad, but I guarantee you, if you look around, there's somebody worse. There's a worse situation than the one you're in. And so you have to find the positive. Sometimes you have to look hard for it. But if you look, you'll always find it.
And I think, just as you're talking about caring for your mom and making the decision, I think in many ways, our culture in America has told us that that's not important anymore.
Yeah.
Looking after our parents and respecting our elders and our elderly, and so I live in a community, there's a large portion of immigrants here. And so when you talk and share with them or watch them, they are caring for their parents more than um, with with maybe more of a expectation that that's what they're supposed to be doing. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know how
And
many
years
times
ago, it was the
people
same
told
in,
me,
in our country, in our culture. Years
yeah,
ago,
yeah,
I think that the world has just become more selfish. That's my
yeah,
opinion. I think people are more in tune with what they want. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing if you don't, everybody cannot handle
right, right, right,
taking care of their loved ones, whether it's at home, whether it's in a facility. I know I have one of my brothers, he's very much not he just doesn't like to see people sick.
right.
He can't take it. I know that.
Girl, we couldn't play doctor because my brother would pass out at the sight of band-aids when we were kids.
Band-aids. Yeah, but see, you know that,
We
right? And
needed to
so,
be a caregiver.
yeah, I don't. Now I'm gonna be honest and say I don't give anybody a pass to, because I do feel like there's something that you can do. Even if you're not spending the night, you're not, I'm like, there's something that you can still take part in doing that would still help the person that's the primary caregiver. But I'm like, that there's some things people, I mean, not everybody's cut out for it. And that's just the reality. Some people are just, their patience is not thick enough. Their patience is very thing. And one thing about dementia, there are those times, and I've seen those posts as well in some of these groups. It's like, why does she keep asking over and over again? Honey, that's just a part of it, right? When they get to that stage of telling you the same thing. You just have to learn, like with my mom, I just kind of learned how to respond the same way, just like she just told me a few moments ago, because it's going to be repetitive. That's just the brain and how the brain works once it starts to, you know, deteriorate, for lack of better words. That's just how it goes. You know, now we're in a space where I don't even get those type of conversations. And so
Right.
what I often tell people is, you know, you're going to have to strengthen what remains, man. You're going to lose so much on this journey, that those parts that you can grab hold to and strengthen, you know, if it's a I love you, now that's one thing my mom can still say. I tuck her in bed every night like a little kid, and I'll say, I love you. And most of the time she'll look at me and say, I love you too. You know, and that alone makes it worth it. Or, you know, in those moments where you are at a peak of like, oh my gosh. And you know, she'll just lay her head in my chest sometimes, because I think as she's gotten older, she's starting to shrink. And so she'll lay her head in my chest sometimes and say, I love you so much. You know, and that just makes it all worth it. It makes
Mhm.
it, you know, are there times when, you know, like you know, yeah, you want to be able to talk to her about those difficult things, or things that are happening in your own life, and you realize you can't do that. And so, you know, those moments can be difficult, but I'm like, you know, even if you can't, and you're not the primary caregiver, there is something that you can still do. You can still do. And so I'm gonna move us a little bit further along, because you know we'll both stop and get to going. But you know, we talked some already about your mom and you know the passing, and I don't want to rehash anything, but I do want to ask the question: what do you think people misunderstand about losing someone that you've cared for full time, you know, you a decade, and so now you're not in that space anymore? What is it that you think people misunderstand?
So there's a couple strong emotions that I had that I wasn't planning for. Um, After the coroner came and picked up my mom, we had already packed up a lot of her stuff, and I had made plans for the some of it to be picked up. I walked out of that facility and I was like, I am never coming back to one of these again. Problematic because I lead support groups in facilities,
Mm.
and yes, I have gone back. But like I just remember walking out of there and just feeling some kind of freedom from that. Um just like very odd, like I don't have to come here every day anymore, you know? And so that was kind of freeing for some reason. And then of course I miss my mom, but like I also really grieve the role of being a caregiver. And so my mom's funeral was on a Thursday. On a Tuesday, I was at an event and somebody asked me, well, what's your Alzheimer's connection? And I looked and said, I used to be a caregiver for my mom. And I just busted out crying because somehow caregiver in many ways is kind of like a badge of honor, you know? Um, One of the Bible verses that I think of a lot in response to this, and this sounds so crazy when I even say it, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And so the much that was given to me was the honor and opportunity to care for my mom. Like, that really was, in retrospect, an honor and opportunity to walk her home, really. Like, I curated her last days of life, you know, or her last years of life. And you know, a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And so, and isn't that weird to think my mom had dementia as an opportunity? But like, I mean, I don't think I fully even understand it myself, but it was just a big emptiness from not being a caregiver anymore.
Yeah. And I agree with you 1000%. And I said it is an honor. It is absolutely an honor to be. There's a quote that says to care for those who once cared for you is the highest honor.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that. I often think about, for me, I often think about the fact that there was so much, and I say this a lot, I understand it better as a parent. You understand the sacrifices that parents make, that as children, you have no idea.
Right.
I think about the fact that, yeah, I'm sure that there are some places that my mom probably wanted to go that she didn't go because she sacrificed that because she had children. Just different things like that I often keep in the forefront of my mind, just because that is the sacrifice that comes along with caring for your loved one. And so, I have to agree with that 100%. I'm going to go back here to some of the comments. Miss Brenda, thank you so much for being on. Miss Brenda is actually one of the ladies who comes over and helps to care for my mom. And so thank you so much for tuning in. And Sonia says she agrees. And that's it. It is the highest honor. Is it difficult? Is it tedious at times? Absolutely. But for me, I always keep in the forefront of my mind the same sacrifices that were made for me. I now get the opportunity to make those same sacrifices, and sometimes even greater. And I think that caregiving role, sometimes you miss that, because I think in so many ways it just became a part of you. It became who you were, right? It's just a part of your life. You spent a long time going in and out of that facility every single day that you were there. You were there with your mom, and not just your mom, but you were also,
13 other people. Well, the
yeah,
other thing is not only did I lose my mom, I instantly lost a community
yeah,
because there were 13 other people. Did I know all their family members? No. Did I know a lot of their family members? Yes. Are some of their family members watching tonight? Yes. But yeah, like a routine. And so I actually shared about that book that we were on before, talking about caregiving and grief. And the book about the grieving brain talks about
yeah,
neurons and pathways. So after my mom passed away, probably at least 3 days after she passed away, maybe only 2. But when I went to run my errands, I ran them up near where my mom's memory care was, because my brain had those neurons already built up, that pathway already built up to drive there. So I drove there to do my errands. I didn't go in her memory care, but I went to that part of the city to do my errands, when I could have gone to CVS right next to my house. But it was like I had to do it. Like I felt compelled to do it. And even this week, when I was going through some of her things at home, and I had like donations bagged up to take, and I thought, well, I'll just take them to church with me on Sunday. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to take them to the donation box near my mom's memory care. And it was kind of like, because I had so much of her stuff and thoughts of her at that point in time, I had to drive. Like my brain required me to drive up near her. And that's like the only reason I could think why I would go there, because I'm sure I drove past donation boxes to get there. But at that moment, that felt like the right thing to do. So I loaded the dog in the car and we went for a little ride.
Yeah. And you do whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Ms. Brenda says, I agree. It was definitely an honor to take care of my mom in her final years. I saw it a way of giving back. She saw it as a way of giving back, and she says taking care of Mama V. That's what she calls my mom, Mama V. Is another form of ministry and serving for me. And I tell you, I love her. She had been out for quite a while with some health challenges, but she's back. Hallelujah. And she'll be here tomorrow. And I get excited when I think about it. But yeah, you talked about the freedom that came along with, that unexpected freedom that kind of came along with the change that happened, with your mom's passing. And I mean, just did you feel guilty about that freedom, or just like, wow, I really don't have this to do anymore?
I didn't feel guilty. I don't think I felt guilty at all because, I mean, one person said this to me: your mom's in a much better place. And I honestly don't necessarily know how I feel about saying that or people saying that to me.
I
But
think sometimes people just don't know what to say, and they
yeah,
just
but I believe that like my mom was free from the disease of dementia. And so the week that she was transitioning, there was a newer resident that had moved into memory care. And so she was newer in the journey, so she could have a conversation. She knew I was a friendly face. She kept coming into my mom's room. They were like, "Do you want me to remove her?" But she kept making her way back, you know? And so my mom was sitting there in her hospital bed, and so she was like, "Oh my gosh." And then one day she said, "You know, you're probably sad, but we should be jealous of your mom." And I just looked at her and she said, "Because your mom's going to see Jesus. She's going to be in heaven and she's going to be see Jesus and her body's going to be healed." And I said, "Yes." I said, "Her body and her mind, her brain will be healed." And this poor lady said, "Oh my gosh, that's right. My brain will be healed. And that's what I need because my brain is broken." And
Oh,
so I was just like, she's like, "Praise the Lord. One day my brain will be healed." And like, just like moments like that, that kind of like helped me shape and frame my perspective as we went through those 4 or 5 days of transitioning, helped me remember like my mom's brain will be healed. And so really when my mom was transitioning, some of the conversations I would talk to her and be like, "Mom, can you hear me? Like, is your brain healed now? Like, do you still have dementia now? Or does that take place when you get to heaven?" There's just so much that like we'll never necessarily know the answer to while we're on earth, but like so many things to consider that she was free from dementia.
yeah. And the other side of that is you gave everything you had plus some.
Yep.
And so, I think that's the best way to look at it is like, you know what? Um, this type of dealing, you don't have to worry about that anymore. I think her brain is healed. I think it is healed. And so even as you move into this next phase of your life, you're in a different space right now. And it's only been a couple months, but what are you rediscovering about you in this particular moment right here? Where, I did see where you went and booked a cruise for yourself. And so I was excited to see that. So, what else is on the horizon for you outside of the dementia classes? And I think, that has become a part of just fulfillment with you. But outside of that, what are you rediscovering about you? What are you looking forward to doing?
Well, I think one of the strangest thing about this is that I've never felt so young and so old at the same time. So I started putting my own house in order. So like, we talked earlier, like my clothes are in order. And so just being able to go back and being more organized and not so rushed all the time, there's an inner feeling of hurriedness that I always seem to have during as a caregiver, like you got to do something fast, you know. One of the things that I'm having a hard time with is allowing myself to be happy and not worrying about what's going to happen next. You know, booking the cruise was like a struggle for me. And is it the ideal cruise that I would want to go on? No, which, like, if that's my biggest problem at this point in time, it's not a bad problem to have, right? But listen, like, I don't necessarily feel like I could feel comfortable booking a longer cruise at this point in time. So I was like, I'm not booking it. This isn't really what I want. This is, you know, but it fits my schedule. Like, just allowing myself the opportunity to go and be and do. That's what I haven't had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, which I mean, I always had it, but I chose not to do it, you know? But just kind of like spreading my wings a little bit more and living my life a little bit more to the fullest.
Okay. Now,
Without,
and I'm
without
looking for that call one day to say, I have a friend I want you to meet.
Well, okay. Okay, so on Facebook, I guess the Department of Health for the state of Florida must have decided that my county is a little bit overweight. So they have, Sonia, you're leaving just at the right part. They must have decided that my county's a little bit overweight. So they let us get the Weight Watchers app for free. So I've been doing that for a little bit less than a month now, or probably right on a month, and lost 11 pounds so far. So I'm trying to get my health back in shape. Joining the gym, because that's great for brain health. So whether you're a caregiver, somebody just listening to us, or somebody whose loved one, or you have dementia, they say resistance training 20 minutes 3 times a week is supposed to be fabulous for your brain. So I'm going to work on that. When I say work on that, I probably should call you by next Saturday and tell you that I've joined the gym.
All right. I'm going to hold you to that.
Hold myself accountable on.
And I need to be right behind you.
Yeah.
Or just get on a treadmill that my girls bought for me that I begged for that just sits in my living room.
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking for.
All right. Well, as we get ready to close, what do you hope people remember about your caregiving journey? Everything that you've done, that decade of caring for your mom, what do you hope people remember from that?
I hope people remember that joy and smiles are still possible. It might be hard, but you have to, like, smiles are possibilities and they can be had, you know? Like, I look at all the pictures of me and my mom, and we're always both smiling. And so one day I was like, oh, well, I was so happy because she was so happy. And then I thought, well, maybe even with her dementia, she was so happy because I was so happy.
Yeah.
And we did that together.
And that's a great way to look at it. Because I think they can feel us. I think they feel how we feel. You know, they go off of how we feel. And I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to have a real quick lightning round. And so I just want you to answer these questions real quick. It's going to be real quick. All right. No problem. And then we're going to get ready to get off. Caregiving changed my life, but it also
gave me a future.
Love it. The woman I am today is
stronger and enjoys life maybe more.
If I could speak to every caregiver listening right now, I would tell them,
take care of yourself, but find joy for your loved one.
My story didn't end when caregiving ended. It
just began.
I love it. Caregiving changes many things. It changes our schedules, our priorities, our relationships, and our plans. But perhaps its greatest impact is the way it changes us. While the journey may leave us weary at times, it also leaves us stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and more aware of what truly matters. The caregiver who emerges from the journey is forever changed, and often in ways that reveal a depth of love and resilience they never knew they possessed. And so, again, thank you all so very much for joining us for this conversation on tonight. I do want to remind you that I do have a book that's out there. It is a Hey Caregiver devotional and prayer journal. You can purchase that. You can find it on my website at www.priscillajjohnlouis. And you can also go out there. I do have an album out as well that's called Hey Caregiver. It's the album volume 1. And the whole purpose of all of it is to strengthen, empower, and inspire caregivers to keep going, keep pushing, keep loving, and by all means to keep caring. I want to also those of you that are in the Big Bend area here in Tallahassee and surrounding areas, I want to also let you know about the Big Bend Hospice Caregiver Connection Walks. That is happening once a month. The next one is going to be on July 18th. It's going to be on Saturdays, every Saturday, third Saturday of each month from 9 to 10 a.m. at Cascades Park. You can go out there and connect with other caregivers in this area. There are various things, what to expect, friendly welcoming group, optional conversations, and peer support, along with some other stuff out there that is being hosted by Big Bend Hospice and Hospice, specifically Justice Lewis. She is their caregiver resource coordinator. Justice is going to join me on July 8th, so you can tune in for that as well. But if you're a caregiver in this area, meet them at Cascades Park every third Saturday of the month. And then as well, they will also be hosting their powerful tools for caregivers. And that the dates for those are upcoming, but you can also contact Justice or just meet us here on July 8th. She'll be on as a guest talking about all of that, but I will share these on my page as well. And I also want to remind you that my website, www.priscillajjohnlouis, you can go on there and find different resources. There are resources out there, agencies, caregiver support groups, different events that are going on here in the city as well. You can go and find that on the website. And then next week, I want you to tune in on July 1st. That's next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. I have a conversation going on with Miss Ivy Ward and Ciola Grant of the Tallahassee Senior Center Foundation. Want to let you know of some things that are going on there at the Senior Center. And so tune in next week. We'll have that flyer and everything out shortly. But this is just information. This platform is a platform where we allow caregivers to come on and be real. Talk about Cheryl Ann on here being vulnerable on tonight. That's the type of thing that we do, right? We're on here, but not just the caregivers, but we also want you all to know of the different resources that we have right here in our community. And just about all of them that we share are free. And so there are those of you out there who need the resources, please take advantage of them. I was at the Alzheimer's Project. I was able to stop through for just a little bit on Saturday. Phenomenal turnout at that conference this past Saturday. It was a great turnout, great information. And so all of it was free. So take advantage of these opportunities. You can check out my Facebook page as well as the website, find out other information that's going on as well. And don't forget to connect. Please connect with Cheryl Ann as well on Facebook. You can find her at Sandy's Daughter PAC, PAC, Dementia Educator. That's Sandy's Daughter, PAC, Dementia Educator. Go out there, find her as well, like, follow, and share. To every caregiver listening tonight, you are not weak for struggling. You are not failing because you are tired, and you do not have to suffer in silence. As I always say, I am here. Cheryl Ann, she's here. Find her on Facebook. Both of us, either one of us, we don't mind talking to you. We don't mind listening to you. We know exactly what this journey is all about. Caregiving transforms us all. The person who begins this journey is rarely the same person years later, but that transformation is not your weakness. It's evidence of your love. If tonight's conversation has resonated with you in any way, and if you're navigating the challenges of caregiving, grieving the loss of a loved one, or learning who you are beyond the caregiving role, please know that you are not alone. We are here for you. Find us. Thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on next week. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Good night.